The drug price debate gets a little clearer, and the GOP race for governor gets a little muddier. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Andy Chow, State House reporter for Ohio Public Radio. Julie Carr-Smythe, State House reporter for the Associated Press. Michael Miller, former Franklin County prosecutor. And Sandy Tice, director of Progress Ohio. Perhaps the most common question this fall is, what is the deal with issue 2, that drug price thing? Well, the drug price thing is a question on the ballot. If voters approve it, it would require state agencies pay no more for prescription drugs than the federal Veterans Administration pays. The VA gets about a 24% discount. But the ads and a provision about legal fees have confused voters. This week, WOSU, WCMH, and TV stations around the state tried to clarify things with a forum, a debate, if you will. Here are the two sides' basic arguments.
What we have is a situation where we have one campaign that wants to return $400 million to taxpayers, and we want to make sure that drug prices come down so consumers have more money in their pockets to do the things that they need to do, hopefully be able to afford their prescriptions if they need them. What the other side wants to do is make sure all that money goes to the drug companies, that they keep it all. So we keep everything exactly the way it is, and real Ohioans, real Americans don't get any relief at all.
The truth is, this ballot initiative only applies to drugs that are purchased by the state government, which means, as you rightly point out, everyone who does not get drugs through state programs, everyone with private insurance, employer-provided insurance, seniors who rely on Medicare, veterans who get their drugs to the VA, people with no insurance at all, none of them are covered, and issue 2 would not reduce their drug costs by a single penny.
Julie Carr-Smythe, are you getting an impression that people are starting to get a better handle on this issue as we're now started to vote, but as we get closer to Election Day?
I do think so. The two sides, I think, are clarifying somewhat in terms of trying to make their arguments really for and against against the pharmaceutical industry on the one side and sort of on behalf of state taxpayers on the other side. But I do think that you can see even in what the clips you just showed that there are many, many gray areas in the middle there that, for example, when Dale answers about this isn't going to help other people, well, that is sort of beside the point, because what the proponents say is that this brings down, if you begin to get big payers like a government to reduce costs, then that's going to impact the whole market.
Yeah.
And likewise, when Matt Borges is talking about all we want to do is return money to these innocent folks, I mean, in some ways, yes, there's also a big payoff for the backers of it.
Andy, the supporters are going to produce a documentary. Apparently the forum wasn't good enough, so they're going to produce a documentary.
Yeah.
Aired on TV stations around the state. They're still trying to get their message out.
Yeah, and the odd thing about it is that the documentary has nothing to do with the issue or the idea of bringing down drug prices. It's all about Michael Weinstein's organization, the AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
The backer of this.
The backer in
California,
favor of issue 2. And I assume the big reason for that is the people who oppose issue 2 are saying don't trust him, don't trust Michael Weinstein, trying to say that there's something malicious, some type of malicious intent behind the issue. So I guess that's the reason for the documentary, but the problem here is that still not talking about the issue.
Yeah. Well, Sandy, because I was on the panel, and Matt Borges was like, Joe Biden, remember Joe Biden said about Rudy Giuliani? He said, Rudy says every sentence, noun, verb, 9/11. Mm-hmm. Well, Matt Borges, for the yes side, was noun, verb, greedy drug companies. Every single answer. He was on message the whole time.
They have emotion on their side, and the other side has a lot of smart people who are experts in the field on their side. But I do give him credit for wearing the Cleveland Indians lapel pin. That was a nice move.
He compared the yes side to the Indians and the no side to the Yankees, who were playing that night.
Well, that was a smart move. But there's so many unanswered questions, and when people are confused, they vote no. And for Weinstein to make himself the issue as opposed to make the merits of the issue tells me they're going to lose.
Mike, you're an Indians fan. Did the lapel pin sway you at all? How do you see this shaping out?
Well, had I watched it, it would have, but, but I did not see it. And I'm one of these people that you mentioned to Julie, I think, that are confused. It's not clear to me. It never has been clear to me. And I don't know what he's doing with this program he's going to put on for an hour. Apparently the same thing, basically the same thing lost in California, and he was pushing it there, so maybe he feels this is the best thing. But I frankly, as I sit here now, 3 weeks before the election or 4, I have no idea what I'm going to do on it, and I think people like me tend to vote no if they don't understand an issue. So I hope I understand it, but if not, I may not vote it either way because it's confusing to me.
I will say that it's easier for the opponent campaign to take an individual and sort of paint a picture of him as the bad guy. It's oddly enough, it's a bit harder for them to paint the entire drug industry as the bad guy, because obviously people who get benefits from prescription drugs have their mixed feelings about it. People who receive good discounts, people who already get VA discounts, who have been very divided about it. Healthcare professionals are divided on it. So it's an easy shot in a way to go after a single guy, good or bad. It's easy for people to understand.
And I don't think it's an issue of people not understanding what the ballot language would do. I think it's an issue of, is it actually going to work? Is it actually going to accomplish what they say they want to accomplish? Because we're 3 weeks out and we still don't really know if it's going to save people money.
Now, the lawyer's provision in this question, it's designed, Sandy, to protect the will of the voters, say. If the voters pass this, state officials may not want to enforce it, so the legal provision is designed to guarantee that the state will implement this law. But it's complicated, and it calls for legal fees. And why did they have to add all that stuff into it?
I wondered why they put that in there, because I think that's an effective message for them, because other than people like Mike, who we all love, lawyers aren't the most popular profession, and to write them a blank check for something like this is a good messaging point.
I want to defend the lawyers. Drug companies and lawyers, Mike. In the media, we're all in a tough spot here. All questions seem to have flaws, though. All ballot questions. You cannot have a ballot question without having someone poke holes at it. What is the perfect ballot question where you can just argue on the merits of the question? Is that such a thing?
Well,
I suppose you could find one, but I don't think this is it. I suppose some more simplistic things on, that we've dealt with years and years, not on necessarily ballot issues, but like the death penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something, you're either for it or you're against it. Very few people change their mind over a period of time, and you can make strong arguments either way, and people understand them.
The folks will get in there, Julie, and write it, and there'll be provisions in there, then a little crack for the opponents to shoot something down.
right. And I know that actually there are some interesting complications with the issue one, the Marsy's Law.
This is the victims' rights,
The
so-called
victims' rights
bill.
piece that we're seeing some other states go, at least one state that passed it last year is trying to repeal it now, saying it had a lot of unintended consequences. So I think that all of these ballot issues, they tend to try to make a sweeping, broad policy point and statement and find that talking point. We saw with medical marijuana how badly that didn't work, even though the polling showed how much the majority seemed to support it.
Yeah. Our next topic, the Republican race for governor has taken a nasty turn. First, Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor, who is endorsed by Governor John Kasich, told a forum that the Kasich administration treats small business people like criminals. Also, a campaign worker for Congressman Jim Renacci reportedly has been trolling one of John Husted and one of his supporters, creating a meme on the internet that is sabotaging a Husted supporter's sympathy post about her dead grandmother. Renacci's wife and that same worker confronted John Husted after that forum. They say Husted threatened them. He says he didn't. The workers left the campaign. Andy Chow, what is going on?
That's a lot to handle right there. Well, I mean, I think you have 4 people vying for the Republican nomination. The Republican Party is really up in the air right now anyway. You have people who want to identify as Trump Republicans, people who want to identify more as establishment Republicans. So I think everybody's trying to carve their own niche here. So I find it very interesting that Renacci and Husted have decided to fight each other when really the perceived frontrunner here is Mike DeWine, and he's kind of skating through at the top unscathed while these two people fight it out below him. So I don't know what's going on with that spat there, but I think the really interesting thing is Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor trying to distance herself from John Kasich, because she's always been known as somebody who's further right than Kasich. So I think she wants to distance herself to win those votes.
She sounds a lot like Donald Trump, on Twitter anyway, the past couple of weeks. I mean, she's blasting the NFL. It's almost like, copying and pasting Trump's tweets on Twitter saying the NFL should demand their players stand for the national anthem and you should not go to the games. And that's pretty far right.
We're most definitely seeing a Trump effect in this race. I mean, for one thing, I know that Mary Taylor was trying to target the Department of Taxation, but we have to remember she was in charge of the Department of Insurance. One of her signature efforts, which I heard her talk about nonstop for 6 years, was how she was making this state better for small businesses and businesses of all sizes. So that's an odd way for her to go. And I do think that we know that Kasich is in a different camp than Trump in terms of their party. Perhaps he's not even in their party anymore or won't be at some point, but everybody's trying to make their niche. And these bright, shiny objects that we see Trump throw out seem to be making their way into this race too, with different, personal attacks and issues.
Mike, how are Republican voters viewing this? Is this just sort of pre-primary campaign sorting and little petty things, or is it a real division developing in the party? More so than what we saw with Trump Kasich.
Well, I think it's new to us, at least in most of my lifetime. They seem to be acting like, I would say, the Democrats used to be. so this is kind of new, going after each other. And, you mentioned, I think Andy's right about they're beating up and letting Mike DeWine skate free, and I think he probably is the leader at this point. And I agree with you, Mike, talking about Mary Taylor going to the right here. And right after the Las Vegas tragedy, and to have her come out and say, when the NRA even says they may be in favor, which I can't believe they said it, but apparently they did, and outlawing these bump things that turn the weapons into automatics, and she's opposed to that. And I was just stunned at that. That's she's definitely out there to the right of everybody.
What's funny is I've seen some recent polling, and John Kasich is popular. And he's popular with his own party. He's also popular with a pretty decent slice of the Democrats. So you'll have his party running, all four of them said negative things about him. And Ronald Reagan had that, the 11th commandment, thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican. Maybe my party's learning something. They're talking about the issues.
But you have to figure that these candidates are doing polling. And on the far right primary voters, Mike,
yes,
John Kasich probably is not as popular as he is with the party as a whole, or the moderates in the middle, both Democrat and
I think
independents.
I think that's probably true, and obviously that's a good chunk of voters that either one of these candidates would like to have, and it looks like Mary is really after it.
I wonder if this primary is going to be similar to the presidential primary, because if you remember, there's a swell of support for John Kasich, not just because he's popular here in Ohio, but there were people who switched parties to vote for him so they could be a vote against somebody like Donald Trump. I wonder if that's going to have the same effect with this gubernatorial race, where people want to try to choose who the front runner might be for the governor's race.
Right, and I think that we need to look closely at the polling because of the fact that it was such an aberrant year last year with Trump and the many cross-party voters. Because if they're asking people, how did you vote last year and who do you support this year, and they're using that as their Republican sample, I'm not entirely convinced. For example, let's say the Mahoning Valley, which went more heavily than ever for
Youngstown area,
Republicans.
yeah.
I'm not convinced those folks are permanent converts to the Republican Party.
On the other side, we're still waiting for the Democratic field to finalize. Richard Cordray, his name is still out there. One of the things he's done recently is he's, as head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, passed new rules for payday lenders. And that was possibly a trigger. Pass those rules, then leave. Sandy, any new rumblings out there?
His friends were telling me that he felt very strongly about getting those payday lending rules out. As we all know, Ohio voters voted to cap payday interest loans at 28%, 2-to-1, and then the next week, the bad guys came in and found a loophole. Rich was the Attorney General when that happened, so he felt strongly about that. His friends tell me he's still getting in. He needs to get in soon or announce he's not getting in soon.
Because the longer he waits, The other candidates can't raise money.
Right. I think people are waiting to see what happens. I understand Jerry Springer is not running.
That's too bad.
That, no, it's
No, I'm
not.
kidding. from an entertainment standpoint, it's too bad. Oh, he's a pretty good policy wonk too, I'll have to admit.
Yeah, but we don't need a 70-something man who paid a hooker with a check that bounced and is not an Ohio resident. That's what we don't need.
And you've got that TV show, which is
That
kind
goofy
of,
TV show that started out with a disclaimer about how it was unfit for children.
You are learning.
But you are right that that field really needs to solidify soon, because the primary really isn't that far off. What, 7 months?
And I wonder if the enthusiasm's just going to die down for somebody like Cordray, where a month ago people were excited to see him jump in, and I think it's kind of a forgotten thought now.
All right. Our next topic, an Ohio death row inmate says he is too sick to be put to death. The state plans to execute 69-year-old Alva Campbell next month for the 1997 murder of an 18-year-old carjack victim in Franklin County. Campbell's attorney says he suffers from several health issues: asthma, emphysema, chronic pulmonary disease, and possibly lung cancer. He broke his hip and has to use a walker. Campbell had a long criminal record even before the fatal carjacking, which came after he escaped custody by faking paralysis on the way to a court hearing. Mike Miller, what do you remember of this case, and what do you make of his claim that he is too ill and we should show mercy on him?
Well, I just left the office when that happened. That was April of '97. Campbell is a guy that had been convicted of numerous offenses, and then he ended up, he shot a highway patrolman. After that was all done and his time served and so forth, he killed a person in a armed robbery. He then did time, got out, I think, in '96 or so, made parole, immediately went on more robberies, got caught for the robberies, got taken to court, and in April '97, as you say, by feigning the paralysis, grabs a gun, goes out, hijacks some kid who's 18 years old, drives him around for about 2 hours and puts him in the butt on the floor of the car and shoots him twice. So it's the second homicide that we know of. Third person he shot. I'm sure there are many more than that. And I'll accept Mr. Stebbins, who I like a lot, his attorney, and a very competent man, that he's in bad health. But I go along with Ron O'Brien on this. When I was prosecutor, we didn't seek a lot of death sentences, but I'll say we sought more than Ron does. So Ron is not some, everybody should die. And he called him the poster child, and I think he's right. And I'm sorry that Mr. Campbell's ill, but I don't think it changes anything. I think he's had his due process. He's drug it out for 20 years now, and I think the board will turn him down and he will be executed.
What is the law on this? I mean, can you, if someone is incapacitated, can you execute him? I mean,
Make them well enough to kill them.
I don't think the incapacitation has much to do with it. You might have a strong argument if you have somebody mentally ill. I think the Supreme Court has said you can't do that, but they don't have that. So I don't think Campbell has a very strong case. Sympathy, he didn't show it to anybody else, and I doubt if anybody's going to show it to him.
We did have the case, remember, where the death row inmate said he had decided he wanted to donate his organs at the very last minute, and actually the governor accommodated that, as I recall, and allowed a delay. Turned out he didn't donate his organs, and he was later executed. So, I mean, certainly when your date gets near, people come up with different ideas for ways to get out of it.
We've had somebody claim that he was too overweight to be put to death, and again, the sentence was carried out. So I think that this is kind of in line with those examples, and I don't think the state's going to do anything different this time.
is the problem with this, Mike, that it's been 20 years?
They're all 20 years, Mike. They all take this time.
So, he's 69, he was, 49, he's aged 20 years, health issues crop up. It's bound to happen.
Sure it is. That if you keep getting continuances and continuances, we're all going to die of natural causes. So that has something to do with it. But I just think his background is so bad and this crime was so bad that I don't think the burden that he has to overcome that in front of the board, I think, is impossible. And I don't think the governor would allow it in any event.
And I will say there's death sentences here in Ohio are high profile right now. We're still using this experimental cocktail. There's a lot of eyes on the death sentence process here. So, he says that he has trouble breathing when lying down. That could be somewhat of an issue when witnesses watch what happens. He could seem like he's struggling, gasping for breath, something that happened the last time a controversial execution happened.
This sounds gruesome. Does he have to be lying down? Could he be in a chair? Could he be standing and braced against
No,
it?
I think that our protocol is, at least right now, is they have to be lying down. It's all set pretty much in administrative rule how that goes forward.
Yeah, and so they can't make accommodations for this person because that might change how the blood flows and things like that. Not to
I've
get too
never
medical.
seen it
Yeah.
happen.
If they did, there'd be another argument, Mike.
Yeah, they never end.
No, they don't.
All right. Our next topic, speaking of arguments, prominent white supremacist Richard Spencer and Ohio State may face off in court over his request to speak on campus. The election of Donald Trump has emboldened Spencer to take his message on the road. He has turned to public colleges and universities as platforms to voice his racist and anti-Semitic ideology.
This country does belong to white people, culturally, politically, socially, everything. We defined what America is.
Of course, his appearances bring protesters and confrontations, like this one last year at Texas A&M University. Tempers flared inside the auditorium. Spencer's supporters and opponents clashed outside, and protesters tried to storm the meeting room but were pushed back by police in riot gear. That's what Ohio State says it wants to avoid. It has rejected Spencer's request on public safety grounds. Spencer threatens to take OSU and the University of Cincinnati to court so he can appear there and here. Sadie Tice, where do you sit on this? I mean, obviously he's offensive, but it is a public university and there's free speech rights. Where do you
Well,
come
the
down
First
on that?
Amendment protects popular and unpopular speech for a reason, and it's usually more necessary for unpopular speech because popular doesn't need to be protected. But I remember when I first started covering the State House many years ago, the KKK always would come and they would hold a rally at the State House. And the first year I went to the rally, there were probably 50 Klansmen and 10 reporters. And over time, there became 10 Klansmen and 50 reporters. And some of us said, why are we covering this? I mean, they're not going to say anything new. They're morons and don't deserve our attention. They're addicted to attention, and that's what they want. So let's not give them what they want. And if something happens, we can pick it up after the fact. We stopped covering them, and they stopped coming. I think you guys should ignore them. That's what they want. They want you to come in and get all angry and push back. Don't do it. Don't go. And if there's some sort of violence, I don't think a public university can legally ignore them, but don't give him what he wants.
I will say I think that the media ignored this group of people for a long time, and people didn't think that they existed, and now there's a light that's being shined on them. They've been around for years now, and we just didn't realize how prevalent they were until now. So,
The interesting thing about these cases, though, is that the university, at least Ohio State, I know, sort of issued an initial rejection, but then when they came back with some suggestions with their concerns about safety, I believe that they went back to Richard Spencer's folks and said, maybe we can come up with a way to accommodate this. We'll review it based on, what kind of violence we think might occur. And it's this review that has gone on. And as of Friday, his lawyer said, well, if some decision isn't made Friday, then we'll go forward with suing over that. So had they outright said, we're not going to do any more review, we're done, they could have sued weeks ago.
Yeah. And he's been successful, Mike. I think the Auburn University in Alabama, public school, they didn't want him. He sued. He won. It's a public university. It's public property. Legally, he probably has a decent case.
I think he's got a very good case. I'm not an expert in the field, but I think if he pushes it, he wins, and clearly he's going to push it. The answer to it, to me, is I couldn't agree more with what Sandy said. It's absolutely right. I saw the Southern Poverty people said the same thing. Just stay away. If you want to rally and protest, go ahead and do it. Just do it, 5 miles down the road.
What about
no one will come, and I think that's the perfect thing. And once no one comes over a period of a year or two, they'll stop.
But what about the argument that we should expose them for what they are? We should put their faces on Twitter and let their bosses know that they're here.
Oh, I think that's
and things
fine.
like that.
I just think that we push back too aggressively because we care so much. We know that there's going to be bigots in America till America's gone. So.
And every other country.
In every other country,
that is
yeah.
true, but I do think too that at this moment in our history, hate groups and white supremacy is news. Yep. So we don't really have a choice entirely to avoid things we might want to.
So journalists can cover it, but maybe the anti-protesters should stay peaceful. Sounds like what you're saying too.
Let's see. Time now for our final off-the-record parting shots. And Sandy, we'll start with you.
Donald Trump has already hurt Ohio by taking big swipes at the Affordable Care Act, and today he's come out and attacked the healthcare market, or the insurance market. The only growth sector during the Great Recession was healthcare. We are home to many, many insurance companies, and I think this is a dangerous precedent to set, and I think the Republican Party needs to push back aggressively instead of saying this is a good idea.
Mike?
I think, as I mentioned before, this with the NRA coming out saying that they would be not opposed to outlawing this bump process to make these weapons automatic, I think we're going to get some action out of Congress, believe it or not, to actually ban them.
Julie?
I was actually going to bring up the healthcare thing too. I think in this coming week that we're going to be getting a lot more clarity on the president's executive order, getting rid of the cost sharing to states on insurance, and we'll be watching this week to see what kind of cost impacts it looks like that is going to have on Ohio.
Andy?
Along with healthcare, the president's also repealing the Clean Power Plan, which would reduce carbon emissions, and it's too soon to see how that would really impact Ohio. Coal plants here are struggling anyway in the marketplace.
Okay. Columbus Marathon Sunday. It's going to be a little bit warm, so good luck to all the runners, and drink lots of water in the Gatorade on the course. But good luck. We'll be out there cheering you on. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. And you can see each episode on demand at our website, wosu.org/COTR. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.